better.
Good morning.
Morning.
Hey, Rob.
How you doing?
Good.
Good morning.
Is Roy here yet?
I haven't seen him.
Okay. I'm guessing you're still having the meeting?
I haven't heard any differently.
Okay.
He emailed me yesterday and said, "Hey, where you at? Can you join us?" And I said, "Yeah, tomorrow I'll be there."
Okay. Well, I guess we'll give it a couple minutes. I can always send him an email.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
How's everyone doing today?
Good.
Morning.
Mr. Young, thank you so much for coming today.
Thanks for having me.
Just going to hang out for a few minutes because sometimes folks get in a little late. Rob, how you doing today, bro?
Oh, I can't complain. How are you?
We still have to get together because I got a product that I got to give you.
Oh, yes. Definitely gonna make that happen. Lately, I've been all over the state. So,
Yeah, same. Kelly, how you doing?
Doing great. How are you?
Good, good.
It's Friday.
Right. Alicia, how about you? How you doing today?
I am good. It is Friday. It's been a week, so I'm ready for the weekend. Doing some
Yeah.
fishing.
Yeah. How's our buddy adjusting to the role of being a police officer?
He is doing really good. He's loving it.
Yeah,
He is loving it. So,
good.
yeah. We are proud of him.
You already know I am from the
I know
first
you are.
day I met him.
I told him,
Yeah.
I told him I saw you and he was all excited. So, yeah, he appreciates that very much.
I can't wait to see him walk down that aisle when he graduates from the academy.
I know. I think we're going to go up too. So I'll probably see you there.
Yep.
He'll probably have a crowd of people there.
Yeah, that's true. Yep. All right, well, it's 10:03. I'm going to get started because I only have a little time with Mr. Young, but I invited Mr. Young a couple of years ago. I was in Nebraska and I had the opportunity to attend a training in one of the breakout rooms, and Mr. Young was the facilitator. And he talked about all these incredible things about correctional staff. Some of you may have heard of him, and the ones that haven't, he has a YouTube channel. It's called
Just
Corrections.
Yeah.
He's got collectively, he's got over 354,000 views on his YouTube page. So this isn't little time. This is big time. If you get a chance, look on YouTube. He's got incredible footage and information and knowledge for correctional folks. He's also an author, an influencer, an instructor, a speaker. He's a former instructor for Desert Waters. And we're very fortunate today that he's here with us today. And he's just going to talk about different things of his experiences in life and working in corrections. So, and also, we appreciate you coming.
Well, thank you. I was planning on just talking about building the perfect peanut butter and jelly sandwich. So you've switched gears on me. No, I appreciate you having me, man. I'm actually a little discombobulated today because I've transitioned into a new role at work. They've created a staff wellness officer position, and I started that on Monday. And Tuesday, we had our first ever uniformed officer suicide. And so it has been just nuts here the last couple of weeks. But I was going to share just a little bit about my story, kind of how I fell into what I'm doing, and then talk a little bit about what I feel is important for correctional officers to understand when it comes to stress, trauma, and that. And then we'll bounce ideas, or if you have any questions, please let me know. I put my work email in the chat and my personal email in the chat. Feel free to reach out to me if you don't have a book or interested in a copy of my book. Email me and I'll send you out one. Okay.
Great book, by the way.
Oh, thank you, sir. Thank you. So the story is I got into corrections almost 18 years ago, and my career was doing fine. Everything was great until I got bumped off of my regular day shift back to overnights. And I started getting pretty depressed, and I wasn't sure what was happening to me. I'd always had bouts of, highs and lows throughout your career and everything like that, but I couldn't pull out of this one, sort of spiraling a little bit. And so I started researching, stress, correctional officer stress, burnout, trauma, suicide, all of those things. And I learned that the statistics for correctional officers are pretty alarming, and I needed to know like what to do about it. So I found Desert Waters. I went to Desert Waters and took their training course, and then started a relationship with her and realized that we need help from the outside in and also from the inside out. And so I kind of took the reins and ran with it. And my job, my passion, my mission has become take these resources that are out there that correctional officers don't understand, don't know about, and then tell them why they're applicable to us and why they need them now. Because for me, one of the things that I didn't know about and didn't understand was trauma. Like, what does trauma look like? What actually is it? What it can do to you? Because like the rest of us, I think that I thought that if you weren't seriously assaulted, if you didn't witness incredible levels of violence, that you should be fine, right? Like nothing should bother you. But that's not the case. And looking into how correctional officers perceive, events and how they feel that they should be affected or unaffected by them, kind of really started me down this path of informing people what trauma actually is and what it looks like. And that's kind of where the book, The Nothing That Never Happened, came out of. And that's what I talk to a lot of officers, and educate them as far as, nothing, right? Nothing needs to actually happen to you. Just being in this environment, no matter if you're uniformed officer, civilian staff, anything, just being in this environment can change the way that you live, perceive the outside world, and interact with people outside out of uniform. And so that's like the goal. That's what I've been, undertaking. That's kind of the why I wrote the books and why I speak. And even when I do videos on, like where to put your keys, for example, I want officers to understand that even something simple as key placement on your belt, the thought process that goes into it. Why do we do that? Well, we do that because we have to have them here in case we're attacked, different things like that. And so every aspect of how we view the world changes because our department trains us to make that change. And then but they don't tell us how to survive after that, right? Like, here's how you do CPR. Here's how you write your report. but we don't tell you how to sleep at night later or why you're not sleeping at night. And so that's where I like to come in and tell officers, hey, you're not okay. Like they just working inside of this environment causes you to change. And here's some changes. And so for me, it's been very educational and successful for me to go to them and say, hey, look, to share my story and say, hey, I have spent the last 15 years disciplining my kids like they're inmates, talking to my wife in an authoritative manner, just judging my neighbors like they're child molester, just giving them all these examples of things that I've been doing. And then it really hits home for them. They're like, holy crap, that's how I do it. And I say, well, maybe that's because of the way that you've been trained. And then we talk about it from there. And I think the big stumbling block, like for me, that obviously in corrections, and I don't know your guys's history or experience if you work in, if you've been uniformed or not, but
most of the folks here are, I believe, probation.
okay.
However, so probation and the probation office and correctionals are all under the Department of Correction.
Okay.
In this state. Some other states is under judicial system. I don't know how it is in Omaha.
Yeah, we're a little we're kind of under a different umbrella.
Yeah.
Probation's like under state, and we're such a large facility that we have we're like our own agency. We have like 500 uniform officers.
Okay, get it. The peer support under the Department of Corrections, this is being recorded and then it's stored in a Power DMS and everyone gets to see it. So, but all the folks here, I believe, are all probation officers.
Nice. Okay. Very good. So when you have those interactions and it's important to understand like what stress and what that can do to you. And we're told about like automatic responses and tunnel vision and how long you can fight before you start losing some motor skills, but we're really not taught any follow-up after that. And so the like I said, my passion has been, you're trained very well to do the job. You're trained very well to have those interactions, but let's talk about how you're handling your home life and how the things that you are exposed to on a daily basis affect you, outside out of uniform. For example, and this is one of the things that I'll share. I went and had a meeting at the county offices yesterday, and I walked in. I was wearing I had a shirt and tie on. I looked like Mr. Roy here. I should have worn my shirt and tie today. But I walked in and I had my little badge, and security just let me through, and which was okay. Whatever, I had, a badge, and I don't know how closely they looked at it, but they let me through. And I thought, well, okay, that's cool. And I went up to the office where the lady was, and the door was, it was locked. It had like a key card and it was locked. And so I knocked on the door, and the lady looked at me, and I had never met any of them before. And she came right over the door, opened up the door, and asked what I was doing there. And I told her I had a meeting, and she let me in. She took me all the way to the back to get a cup of coffee and all that. And I'm thinking, this lady's crazy. Like, in my mind, I'm thinking this is not security. Like, you're leaving yourself wide open. And in this day and age, this should, so my brain is like, that's how my brain works. And so during my meeting, as I'm pointing out how correctional officers think to the civilian, I told her about this. I'm like, if I was doing anything nefarious, if I had any ill intention, I could have just done it. Like, there's absolutely no safeguard, no protection for anything. Now, what that does to me is creates a really low level of anxiety, a little adrenaline, because I'm thinking about these things. And whether I have outward reactions to them or, it's visible to people looking at me, my body is still reacting to that stuff. And that's one of the dangerous things that we don't touch on or talk about enough, because your body, those things that you can't control, the adrenaline, the cortisol, coming down, operating in a hypervigilant state all the time. Those are things that, as an officer or anybody who works in high tense, high stress situations, we learn to navigate that. So when we're in those situations, we don't really think that it's doing anything because this is the third or fourth or fifth or 500th time that we've done something like this. But our body is still getting into that fight, flight, or freeze, and we're still shaving years off our life. And so I think that knowing that and then saying, here's some ways to combat that, like to keep yourself healthier, to participate in positive activities, to do those sort of things, and feed those to correctional officers so they can kind of battle that. The other thing that I have found in this environment is that not everybody is receptive to this conversation. Like if you talk to a group of law enforcement officers or corrections officers, probation officers, all professional tough guys and gals, they're fine, right? Nothing bothers them. They're used to being in control, an authority position all the time. But what they don't understand, and so part of the side effect of that is when I go to you and I say, hey man, what we dealt with last night kind of messed with me a little bit. Like I had trouble sleeping. Their natural reaction is to say, well, why? Like, I don't understand that. That shouldn't be a problem for you. It was just part of the job. And so then what that causes is, first of all, I feel like the person saying that is in complete denial. And what that causes is the person who's coming to their coworker, their peer, and saying, hey, I'm struggling, I'm having trouble processing, it isolates them. It makes them feel like there's something wrong with them because they're not numb to what's happening, right? So, for example, our staff suicide this week. I had a couple of conversations with officers that said, I don't feel anything. Like, is that okay? Like, I feel bad about not feeling bad. And so we sit and talked about that a little bit. Hey, that's a normal reaction. And you are feeling something because you're feeling this guilt for not feeling anything. And why aren't you feeling anything? Like, some of them have had history with it. So when it comes up, they automatically, they're angry, or, they have this mindset of we have to just keep going. And so there's been some interesting conversations this week. But how I pitch it to them is I say, hey, look, in this field, in this profession, we can't survive anything by ourselves. Like if I go to a cell and there's this gigantic guy that I have to restrain or take to court or whatever, I wouldn't do it by myself. My facility wouldn't expect me to do it by myself. My coworkers should not expect me to do it by myself. And so mental health needs to be treated the same way, like stress, all of that needs to be treated the same way. I need to be able to come to them and say, hey, I'm not okay with this. And they should react the same way without question, just like they do when I ask them for help with force. Because some people are stronger than I am. Some people are more skilled at handcuffing than I am. And they don't have a problem with helping me with that. And so I tell them, I say, hey, look, you don't have to use this mental health stuff for you. You don't have to really understand, maybe it doesn't affect you. Maybe it's not applicable to you at all, but you should have a little bit of knowledge and understanding about it because you have to watch out for your coworker. We're supposed to have each other's back and watch our six and all that shit that we say. But sorry, I didn't mean to swear. But that should apply to everything that we ask for help for. And I'm not going to shame somebody if they're less skilled at negotiating or less skilled at fighting. Then I shouldn't shame somebody for saying, hey, I can't handle this divorce on my own. I don't know what to do because my kid's out of control. We should still be able to be there for them. And so that's kind of been my two-prong approach as I say, hey, treat mental health like you do in your mental wellness, like you do self-defense. So we're going to teach you tactics that you may or may not ever use, but if the situation comes up, here's some tools. Here's what you can do. And if this never, ever applies to you, then it may apply to one of your coworkers. In fact, statistically, it will. We lose 3 officers a week nationally to suicide. The PTSD rate is 34%. I mean, it's divorce rates off the charts, mortality's crazy. So somebody is affected by something, and we need to know that so we can keep an eye out on it for that. But yeah, so those are like that's like the platform, that's been the passion, and that's been the challenge for me in this environment and with this group of people. Have you guys had similar? Because you guys are all on the peer support team, right? Is that correct? Have you had similar like interactions when you've? I called a gentleman the other day and I said, "Hey man, I'm a really good friend of the officer that died." I said, "Hey man, do you need anything?" He goes, "Yeah, I need you to leave me alone," like really aggressively. I'm like, "Okay, but I will follow up with you in a day or two. I'm just letting you know, but I'll give you some space now." So, have you had similar reactions, and how have you, overcome that?
So I'll tell you my story. A couple of weeks ago, we had a suicide of a resident, and we did the brief. And the staff came in. We met them at they worked the overnight, so we met them at 6 o'clock in the morning. Had coffee and donuts. We sat down and talked. And initially, everyone said, "Oh, I'm good. It wasn't me. It's not my family. I'm good." The captain said, "Oh, I'm good. I've been doing this for 20 plus years. I'm good. I'm this shit doesn't faze me one bit."
Right.
And I found by not saying, "How are you doing?" I say, "What can I do to help you?" is better, because automatically people get into that place where I'm good. I don't need any help. What can I do to help you?
Right.
And I asked some engaging questions. And I told my story. Hold on one second. I told my story of the things that I've seen: hangings, fights, cut-ups, and how I took all that stuff and it was suppressed in my system for years. I didn't talk about it. And then there's a trigger that happens and it comes right back up quick. When the first time I did the CISM training, all that stuff resurfaced because it was not addressed properly like we do today. And I told them my story and I said I wasn't okay. I was taking it out on my wife, taking it out on the kids, like you said earlier, hit home with me. And it wasn't healthy. She's like, "Don't treat these," my wife would say, "Don't treat these effing kids, don't treat these kids like they're your effing residents." Back then it was inmates, prisoners.
But you know what the crazy thing about that is, Roy? When my wife said that to me, I said, I had to look and I said, "You know what? I'm actually treating them worse than I treat the offenders because I have to be professional to them. I have to be
Yes.
respectful, and there's real life consequences if I tell an inmate to kick rocks, or if I say what I want to this person who did terrible things to other people." And so I take that, I internalize that, and when I go home where there's no consequences, really, I lose it, you know?
That's true. You're right there. That's exactly what I would treat them worse.
Yeah.
Because and the thing is, it is consequences. It's divorce. And my wife has told me many times, this might ruin us. This stuff can ruin us. And that's when I had to check in and say, she's right. So I had to start expressing my feelings to her and say, "This is the type of day I had. This is where I'm at. I need space. Let me process this in my head so that I can get through it. And afterwards, I don't have an issue with talking to you." Because I isolated. The first thing I did when I got home after a bad day, I would go up in the room and isolate from the family. So it was unfortunate, but I've learned over the years, and we now learn and we teach this stuff at the academy, how this stuff is important so you process it and you get over it, and it doesn't take an effect and toll on your family life.
What's crazy is that that what you're suggesting is like communication, and and saying, "Hey," that's why I'm trying to infuse this early in our training right away, is saying you need to know from day one that your life has already changed. The way you talk, the way you walk, where you sit at a restaurant, all of that is going to change from now on, and the way you look at the world. And then have that conversation and say, "Look, part of my profession, just like the push-ups and the energy drinks and all that other crap that I do, is the me time, is the decompression time, is the I can't go to your sister's house tonight because her husband reminds me of an inmate, that kind of stuff. Those those open conversations about that, and to explain why. But the problem, Roy, is that officers don't know that. They don't know why they're pissed. They get home, they're jacked up, they and they're arguing with their wife, they're arguing with their kids, and they just think that because they're so good at what they do, right? They're rock stars inside, but then they go home and the lady at the phone company doesn't jump when the CO says jump, because she doesn't have to, like an inmate does. And that starts to mess with us, because for 60 hours a week for 10 years, everybody's been doing what we say, or we make them do what, we want them to do. But now nobody's doing that. I can't figure it out. Now I'm going crazy, So it was all, my wife said a similar thing. She said, hey, you're no good with people anymore, and you need to fix it. And I had to, at first I was like, yeah, whatever, blah. And so I'm like, I talk to people all day, and I went to work, and I was doing my walkthrough. I love doing my walkthrough. I love talking to the inmates. I talked to them about books and music and the Illuminati and sports and whatever they want to talk about. And an inmate asked me something about, I don't even remember what he asked me about. And I said, you know what? It doesn't really matter. We're all going to die anyways. Like, who cares? And I finished my walkthrough. I came back out to my area and I said, hey, that was kind of messed up, what I just said to that kid. The next night he came out and talked to me, and he said, hey, Officer Young, he said, are you okay? He said, you usually come through and talk to us. We look forward to it. Last night you didn't seem like yourself. And then I said, no, I'm good, man, whatever. And then I'm sitting there thinking, if my wife sees a change, if the population sees a change, like, what's going on? And that's when I had to really start looking at, like, myself and then saying, okay, yeah, I'm awesome inside. It's kind of like, you ever watch, are you familiar with Ozzy Osbourne? Ozzy Osbourne, used to have that stupid reality show, and he when he talks, he's like, you can't understand him. But when he sings, he still sings like he did in the 70s. And I kind of feel like that sometimes. Like, inside, I perform very well. Like, I know exactly what to do. There's a procedure for everything I do. But when I get home, I'm a bumbling idiot. Like, I can't do life anymore. And when you can't do that, and it starts to weigh on you, and you start to see these things kind of tear away, then it's almost weird, right? Like, you should acknowledge or see the change at home, like work bleeding into home. But it was almost the opposite for me. It was like because home was kind of rocky, it was starting to affect my work. And that's when I'm like, well, what's happening? And so that was like an eye opener for me, because I didn't want to get divorced. I love my wife. It's kind of a cool gig. And so I'm like, I have to do some self-reflecting, but that's a really hard conversation to have with, my wife at the time was working. She was going to school. We have 3 kids, and I had to sit down and say, look, I need some me time. And she was like, excuse me, like, me time? What is that? And, but now she does. Now she'll be like, if I wake up pissed, or if I come home, she'll be like, you know what? We're going to go to my mom's for dinner. Why don't you go for a walk? Or why don't you go read a book? Or I said, no, I'll go with you. She goes, no, you're not coming with me tonight. You need to do whatever you got to do, because you're not good tonight. So on days that I don't recognize it or don't want to admit it still, she does. And that's very important to have that support system. So
That's interesting you say that. Yesterday I did an academy class on cultural diversity. So I'm up there talking for 3.5 hours. So when I get home, the last thing I want to do is talk. I just want to veg out and not listen to anyone. So she wanted to go to some event at Thompson's Point. It's a ocean front. They have concerts and things like that. And I'm like, I really don't want to go hang out with your friends there and sit there and watch them drink and have conversations. I've been talking for 3.5 hours. And she looked at me and said, I understand. Go have your time to yourself so that you can recharge. So points you're making are dead on, because it's important to recognize it, because you need that recharge time. Otherwise you explode. I explode at her, the kids, the dog, and it takes an effect on all of us. I come here and I'm not as, exciting as I'm usually am. And so it's important to recharge.
What is, and that's one of the things that my concern, and with myself, I don't do a very good job because we're the helpers, right? And so we're out there just dumping our emotional energy on everybody, and don't save any of it for ourselves. So I remember I had to go up and negotiate at a door with a lady who didn't want to go to court, and I stood up there for 45 minutes, got her to go to court, and I was walking out with an officer, and she goes, that was a really good job. She goes, how do you have anything left when you go home? I said, I don't. Hmm. And I'm getting better at that over the last couple of years. But I didn't even realize that I was doing that. Right. And I was giving the population and my peers the best version of me, and giving my family the leftovers. And that was, if my wife wasn't the person that she is, I would have been divorced years ago, because she has put up with a lot of crap that a lot of my coworkers' spouses that have got divorced, didn't. And so I'm very thankful for her. I was able to, and then I have my older boy who is out of the house now. He's 22. He's in Virginia. He's in the Navy. And I had a really crazy night when we were kind of waiting. Was he going to go? When was boot camp? When not? Whatever. And the military is really, they tell you one thing and it switches like all the time. So you just don't know until you go. But the night he told me, he's like, "Hey, I'm leaving in 2 weeks." Like, I cried my eyes out on the way to work that night, because I thought of all the hours that I'd spent in the facility, like that I could have been spending with him. I thought about all the explosive anger, all the mistakes. I mean, it was an incredibly, it was a gut check. It was an eye-opening moment for me. And I said, I got to change how I'm doing things. And the problem is that takes work, right? So I have 2 other kids that are one's 17 and my daughter's 13. And for all but the last couple of years, I was operating in that old way. And so basically what had happened is they had learned to do life without me. I was like the weird boyfriend that came over on the weekends to date their mom, and so a lot of my frustrations, I'm cleaning it up for the Zoom meeting. Usually I'm a little more engaging and graphic, but they
Don't hold back.
My son wrote a book report. He had to do a book report on the Rocket Man. And if you're familiar with Elton John's song, The Rocket Man, but it's a short story by Ray Bradbury. It's amazing, because it talks about how this guy goes off into space and he's away from his family. He only comes home for 3 days. And it talks about his transition process back to normal life, and then how he kicks out again. And basically my son read it and gave it to my wife and said, "Hey, read this." And so my wife sent it to me at work and said, "Hey, Frank just said, read this." And I just started, I was 2 paragraphs in and I'm like, holy crap, I'm the Rocket Man. Like, this is my life. And the story ends with them. You learn that the mom, because the kid asked the mom, why do you not even engage dad when he's here? Like, why do you not talk to him? Why are you so standoffish? And she said, because she goes, I just pretend he's a ghost. She goes, I learned to live without him years ago. And it's just easier. And I'm like, holy crap, And so I asked my son the next night at dinner, I said, hey, I said, so you're doing that book report? I said, how'd you like it? He goes, well, what do you want me to say? That it reminded me of you? And I'm like, wow, you know? And so that was another deal where I was like, okay, how can I get my life back? Like, I still have this incredibly stressful job that I'm exposed to all sorts of craziness, but I also have to have that balance and actually engage when I'm at home, not just be at home, but actually engage and live life. Right. And so that's, I think, where a lot of us kind of fall short is we're home, we're at the barbecue, we're sitting on the porch, but we're not engaging. We're not there. We're like a ghost. And so for me, my two things that I've really done and really worked on is my transition from officer to father, to having that distinct, like, and I'm not, this is not the work at work, leave work at work and home at home thing, because that's bullshit. But this is when you get off of work, what do you do to draw that line? Roy, like you said earlier, you go upstairs, you know, take your meat. Where is that line, right? And for me, years ago, as silly as it is, I used to have a speed bump on the road about 3 blocks from my house. And I would drive home. I drive home with no radio, windows down. I don't want to talk to anybody. My wife used to call me right away as soon as I got out, and she would start, bah, 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 bah. And I'm like, stop. I love you, but just shut up, please. And so I told her, hey, I'll call you. Like, let me call you when I'm ready. And but I would drive home, and when I would hit that speed bump, I could just feel different. Like, okay, I'm home, I'm safe, everything's going to be okay. And then, you know, on the flip side, when I would go into work 3 blocks from my house, I would hit that bump and I would start to get ready for whatever was going to happen that day. I didn't realize that that was happening until they fixed the road and took that bump out. And the first day that I drove through it, I'm like, where's my bump? Like, what? Now what am I going to do? Like, where's the cutoff? You know, so whether it's taking off your uniform, whether it's, you know, turning off your cell phone, whether it's going for a walk, whatever it is, for me, it's been, where's that line from work life to home life, and what process has to be in place for you know, for that good transition. Like Roy said, I've been de-escalating. I've been putting out small fires all day, solving problems. And then the minute I walk in the door, everybody wants the same thing from me that 100 people inside just wanted from me. And what do? You blow up because you can, and because you've been dealing with shit all day, and now I got to deal with this, and I don't care what we have for dinner. And you know, and that's not how you have a happy home life. So you have to fix it. But for me, it's been that transition strategy. And then I've been working on boundaries, right? Like, you can't be all things to everybody all the time. And I have to learn that, hey, it's okay if I don't reply to these comments right now. It's okay if I don't take this phone call right now. It's okay if, you know, I don't say yes to everything and everybody, because that's taking too much of my time. That's running me down. And I need to say, hey, for a week, like when my son was back he got married 2 weeks ago. I was off for a week. I said, no work, no videos, no corrections, no nothing. I'm just gonna be family for a week. And it felt great, you know. And then I came back and I had a bunch of crap to do, but it, you know, it was good. And having that distinct, like, you know, boundary for me was really good here. Let's see, which one's Mike? Mike, hey buddy, but what about COs who are placed on admin leave under investigation? So admin leave or under investigation, what support should be offered? For me, it depends on what the allegations are. So I would think that if it's for me, this has always been really touchy. If it's a criminal proceeding, you know, if somebody's from the team is comfortable to reach out and say, hey, you know, good luck, or, you know, if there's, you know, anything that we can do, here's some resources for you. I've always been real cautious of, you know, depending on what the situation is, going out, engaging, interacting with that officer, depending. Now, if it's a use of force issue, or it's something that, you know, yeah, they may lose their job, but it's not, they're not going to prison, then yeah, they need to know that, hey, we're still here. We still want, because whatever happened, you know, if it's traumatic, they're still going to need help through this process. You know, now their life is changing. They don't know where the thing. So I would still engage with those folks. I would still let them know that we're here. And then I would check in with them throughout that process. Because like for us here, you're placed on admin leave. I mean, guys have been on leave for 6 months, 8 months sometimes, you know, and their number one gripe is when they come back, nobody talked to me. Nobody checked on me. You know, it's just like, well, and you don't know what's going on. And so I would say that unless it's dangerous for you to interact with them, you know, or it could pull you into whatever their court case is, then I would still engage and interact with them and let them know that the team or the union or the whoever that we're still here for them. Or, you know, like for me, if there's been an officer who's a close personal friend, you know, you have your pockets of people that are really tight. Those people usually stay pretty close to them, and keep up with them. But yeah, I think that we still need to keep some sort of communication with them. That makes sense.
In addition to what you said, and I agree with everything you said, one of the things that I do when people are out, I don't talk about the case. I just send an email or a text message. Hey, just let you know I'm checking in, let you know I was thinking about you, and hope things are going good for you. It's just one way of making a connection and letting them know that, because the one time I remember speaking to a gentleman, he's just like you said, he was out for 2 or 3 weeks, I don't remember what it was, but he said not one person checked in on me and how he felt when he came back. He's like, who are my real friends here?
Right.
And that stuck with me for a long time. So now I make a point, folks that I know that are out, simple text message, hey, how you doing? I just want to let you know I'm thinking about you. Hope that things are working out. I don't talk about the case because that's not my business.
Right.
But just a simple text message or an email message or a Facebook message.
So let me ask this for you guys. One of the problems that we have here is, and you said it, you reach out to the people that you know about. And so we had an officer that was out, he had tore his ACL. He was out for a while. Not somebody that I interacted with on a regular basis. And so sometimes you lose track of people. And he came back and said, hey, nobody checked on me when I was gone. Sometimes we don't know the people are gone. So have you had any success? Have you had any luck with like a process or a notification system? Or do people like say, hey, you guys, so-and-so's out, you might want to check on them? Because our issue here is with 500 people, a person will be gone 2 or 3 weeks before we even know they're gone. And then we call and check up and they're like, well, yeah, I was in a bad car accident 2 weeks ago, but I'm fine now. You know, and it's like, well, crap, man, I didn't even know. Or you don't even know why they're gone. You know, and you text them, hey, I'm just checking in, you know, haven't been at work for a couple of days. Well, yeah, then they had this horrible thing that happened and you look like a dummy because you didn't know anything about it. So have you guys, I mean, what do you guys do?
We don't have a formal system, kind of like word of mouth, but nothing formally. But that's a good idea, a notification system somehow checking in. I don't think.
Go ahead.
Anything that you guys, because I'm new to peer support, the ones who've been here doing it for a longer period of time. Any notification system in the past? No, yeah.
No,
All we
it's been
have, I
word
mean,
of
if
mouth, and we
somebody's, go ahead.
brought this up in our adult, and well, a lot of this group have brought it up at times, and it boils down to a confidentiality piece. And how much can we say and how much can we do?
Right. Well, it'd be nice to reach out to them and you know, if we notice a person's gone and saying, hey, if there's anything that you need, let us know. I mean, some people don't. Some people don't want anything. Some people want to be private and they don't want to tell you what's going on. But I would rather have that conversation, like somebody say, hey, yeah, I mean, I'll be out for a while, but I'd like to keep it private, versus having the conversation. Because what we're dealing with here is like this gigantic morale pile of crap. And a part of that is because nobody is checking on nobody. Nobody appreciates anything anybody does, or nobody feels like they actually have value. And so I want to find a way to be like, hey, we care about you. Even if you don't want us to, we still do, and we're still here for you. But I haven't had any good answers on how to track those people down, you know?
I mean, I worked at a juvenile facility for 16 years, and I was a supervisor there for 6 of them. And, you know, when people were placed on administrative leave or under investigation for use of force, it was a pretty common thing. Pretty much it's an occupational hazard.
Right.
Someone's going to make an allegation. But it was made pretty clear that nobody talked to them. I mean, you don't want to, if you were, you know, working partner or witness, you certainly don't want to be, you know, dragging yourself into that. If you're a supervisor, you know, you don't want to be interfering with an investigation. And a few years ago, we had an experienced officer in the juvenile facility who was put on investigation for relatively routine use of force, from what I understand anyway. And he ended up killing himself. And, you know, having spent some sleepless nights and days where I don't feel like eating, worried about a work-related issue, I can understand how his head probably just turned into a big echo chamber. And putting yourself in those situations, you know, what do you tell your significant other? You know, I mean, how much can you tell them? How much do you want to tell them? And you're totally isolated, and that can be a very dangerous place. And I hated, you know, I mean, it really impacted a lot of people at the facility when this young man took his life, and it made me regret, as a manager, the way that we've just kind of said, suck it up, buttercup, or don't worry about him, don't taint, you know, whatever's going on, it's not your business. And meanwhile, you have a guy whose head is in that place where he takes his life. It's just tragic. So, and I don't want to see that happen again.
Yeah, I think that it would be okay to refer them, like, hey, you know, internally, officially, we can't do anything, but here's the name of a therapist, or here's the name of a counselor, here's the name of you know, a support group, whatever it is.
You know, that reminds me of how we used to deal with it. Here's a piece of paper with employee assistance program. You know, here
No, yeah, not. So what I've done is because nobody here. So for our situation we had the other night, EAP was called, Employee Assistance Program, and she sat in the office next to mine, and nobody came and talked to her. I had several officers come in and sit down and talk with peer support, and so the information is important. The delivery of the information is also important. So EAP is an option, but it's not the only option. I always tell people it's like the Wikipedia of therapy, right? Start there and then go somewhere else. But I'm talking about, hey, let's look on the phone right now. Let's look on the computer right now. Let's get this number for you. You know, I had a fellow officer that I've been dealing with for a few weeks, and I'm like, do you need me to drive you somewhere? Do you need me to drive you to your doctor's appointment? Like, I need you to, it was to the point where I was like, okay, here's the phone. Here's the number we're calling right now, like on speaker. Here's the phone, call, make your appointment. And, you know, then call me when you get there, you know, like I was almost to the point the other night where I was going to drive him and check him in. You know, we have to be more engaging. And so not just here, you know, here's the card, you know, see you later, have a good day, but add a little more personal touch and saying, hey, here's the information. Do you need me to call with you? Do you need me to go with you? Do you need me to, you know, whatever. I think if we can package it that way, for me, that's how I want to do it. And it's been a little bit better. And so I've worked to build like external resources. I know a couple of correctional officers that went on to get their, counseling and therapy stuff. And I partnered with them I sent officers there, because we're so cynical, we don't want anything internal. All right. So go see somebody else then. There's a ton of people out there that we can get you in to see, and that was I don't want to, the guy went to EAP and he didn't like EAP. And so he was done with all counselors and all everything. No, man, look, I have 5 other numbers there. Let's go. Like, I'll take you. They're on the phone now. I went so far as to even have my buddy from Texas call a guy, he had known him, and I said, hey, call this guy and tell him to get off his ass and go see somebody, so that's what I've tried to do. And especially with my channel and stuff, I had a young man reach out to me from Abilene, Texas a couple of weeks ago. And he was, I talked to him for 45 minutes. He had watched his coworker get, stabbed in front of him, and he didn't want to go back to work. Like, he didn't know if he's going to be able to do this job. And so I got on the horn. I put it out there. Does anybody know anybody in Texas? I'm emailing my people that I know in Texas. And I told him, I said, hey, I recommend that you talk to somebody professionally. And if you need me to help you find that person, I'll help you find that person. He's like, no, you know what? I think I'll find somebody and I'll let you know. Well, I went ahead and started doing it, and then started texting him, the next day, some resources that I found. And then I checked in with him, 3 days out, 5 days out, and asked him how he's doing. He had made an appointment. He had went and talked to somebody, and, a couple weeks later, he was starting to feel a little bit better. But I think that, I don't know if it's aggressive or assertive approach because I know what the stakes are, right? Like, we're not talking about a staffing vacancy. We're talking about somebody not living anymore, right? Or we're talking about somebody's getting divorced and not having their family anymore. And so I want to make sure that they have those trusted resources. And so that I'm that point where they know that they can say something to me. I'm not going to overreact. I'm not going to judge, but we're going to point them in the right direction. And I'm going to walk them there if I have to walk them there, So that's kind of how I do it.
You think we also, as a department, should be doing a much better job of destigmatizing mental health issues?
Oh, yeah.
Because everyone goes through things, and not everyone has the ability to express their feelings. I'm not one to sit down and talk to someone one-on-one. Traditionally, I think as I get older now, if you look at my 20-year-old self, 30-year-old self, 40-year-old self, and my 50-year-old self now, if I need to talk to someone, it's okay. Right. And I think we have to do a much better job of talking to folks and saying, listen, if you're going through something, there's nothing wrong with it, nothing at all. I have family members that go through it. I have to deal with it personally. And we go through things, and it's okay to sit down and talk to someone. It's nothing wrong with it. Had I been willing to sit down and talk to someone professionally when I was younger, probably would have been still married to my first wife. I wouldn't have had to go through all that ordeal, but I wasn't willing. She's like, let's go get counseling. I'm like, I'm not going to sit there and talk to someone about what.
Right.
We can get through this together. We never did, but I wasn't willing to talk to someone to look at myself. So we have to do a much better job of destigmatizing mental health, counseling, talking to someone. We all have emotional issues, every one of us, and that's a fact.
Well, and so and you're right. The problem is that agencies, once they open that can of worms, now they got people talking about it. Now they have to actually act on it, right? They have to deal with it. Mike, you said earlier, suck it up. We had an inmate that jumped off the top tier and killed themselves. And 10 years ago, they would have just told that officer to get back in there and work. But now, because we're talking about mental health, that officer says, hey, I feel anxious when I go in there. And so they said, well, the therapist said, can you put her somewhere where there's not a top tier, where it's a one level thing? Well, now you have a staffing issue and you have all these things, she can only work certain areas. And so agencies kind of look at it sometimes like that. And other staff members look at it like that, like, oh, now I got to go in here and work because she's crazy and blah, blah, blah. But I think just changing one mind at a time, giving them that information. And so what I did one time is I went to the executive meeting that they had, and I gave them a card, a note card, and I stole this from Desert Waters. I said, just jot down 1 or 2 things that you feel have changed in your life or that bother you about working in this profession. And I gave them a little bit, and they wrote a couple things down. You know, these are executive staff members that haven't seen the secure side of the facility in God knows how long. And so they all wrote stuff down, and we talked about it and discussed, and they had similar things and everything. And I said, and if the job bothers you guys this much, imagine how much it stresses out the people that are actually doing the job. Right. And so that was kind of like, oh, holy crap. Like, yeah, because no matter what the issue is, right, you have to personalize it. You have to put a face on it, because if nobody cares about that particular issue, then it doesn't mean anything to them. So I made it personal. So, and then what I've been doing is, you know, with our staff member that passed, that first night, you know, executive staff was over there. Our director, deputy director, captains, everybody was over there showing their support, you know. On the way out that night, I said, we need to do the same thing tomorrow. And they kind of looked at me crazy. And I said, I don't care who, somebody's got to make rounds tomorrow too. You need to make rounds the next several days so staff see that you are there to follow up, that you're there for the long haul, and not just at the time of whatever happened, you know? And so to me, it's all about that, like the starting at the top, saying, yeah, this is the thing, and we want to help you guys, and then show that. And then from the bottom, so it's like 2 different challenges, right? It's like getting management buy-in, but then also getting officer buy-in, which might even be harder than management buy-in. But so that's kind of been what I've done. I you know, go into them. And honestly, Roy, when I came back from Colorado with this training and this stuff, and I said, I wanted to get it implemented, right? My agency sent me, but then they weren't letting me teach it. You know, it was like 3 months later, and I'm like, I'm standing in the office. I said, are we going to wait till somebody blows their fucking brains out in a housing unit before we do anything? You know, and they're like, oh, calm down, Bill, blah, blah, blah. Well, like 2 weeks later, I heard another sergeant say that to somebody else in a different department. Like, what are we going to do? Wait till somebody kills himself upstairs before we... And I'm like, there it is. There's the seed. And it started going. And then I got the green light and we went. But it is, that's why a lot of wellness programs don't work. A lot of peer support teams don't succeed, is because the people that are heading them up don't really care. It's not they don't understand the gravity of what it is that they do. And if you have somebody passionate that's willing to go get it and understand that you're talking about saving lives here, then I think it'll work. But a lot of agencies don't do that. They just grab the same person that's doing the sick leave committee or anything else and say, hey, here you go. You know, you're peer support coordinator now, you know? And it's like, well, okay, whatever. I work Monday through Friday, weekends off. I don't ever deal with offenders. I don't care, you know? So I ramble a lot. Sorry, guys.
This is all great information. And you're right. Well said, well stated. When we were in Omaha, you had talked about the garden. And I read your book, and you talked about you went out with your wife and you guys went on a shopping trip, and she wanted to go back and stop at a friend's house, and then they're in the back. Oh. They're in the back room. I mean, we only have another minute, but that in that book, if you guys go out and get his book, it's on Amazon. It's a great book. What's the name of the book one more time? Just give it a shout out.
I have 2. The Nothing That Never Happened and When Home Becomes a Housing Unit are my 2. But yeah, if you can search them on Amazon. They're both up there. But yeah, that was the night, Roy, that she said, I'm no good with people anymore. And it is it's a real thing. And part of winning any battle is knowing that you're fighting it, right? So if we don't know that we're engaged, if we're fighting for our lives, then we're not going to fight like we're fighting for our lives. So thanks, Mike. I appreciate it, brother. Send me an email if you guys, like I said, send me an email and I'll send you a book. And then if you read it and I'll send me your thoughts. And then if you watch the videos and you send me an email, send me your thoughts and stuff. I appreciate the feedback.
Subscribe to his channel on YouTube also. Some great information on that YouTube station that he has there. Incredible information.
Well, thank you, sir.
Well, so we're going to have to wrap up. I know we have to go to 11. Any final thoughts, questions, concerns?
No, none from
Thank
you
you.
guys. Yeah.
Well,
This is good.
I appreciate it. I think for me, the last thing that I'd leave you with is that when you're attacking wellness, when you're attacking, and dealing with somebody in crisis in a situation, you guys are, trained peer support guys, so but you have to start where they're at. And I don't think a lot of people do. I think they're like, well, I don't understand why this person's this stressed, or I don't understand why this person's dealing with this. But none of that matters when you're talking about this kind of stuff. It's their perception, their perspective that you have to take into account the reality, and then figure out how to get them from where they are to, or where they think they are, to where you need them to be happy. So, and you can only do that by talking to them and engaging with them. So,
wow. Well, Mr. Young, you're excellent, bro. Seriously.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I said that in Omaha. I'm going to say it again today. Incredible information, great content, and I really appreciate you coming out and talking to us for an hour. I thought it was going to go like 20 minutes, but this hour is well received, and we appreciate it.
Thank you.
So if no one else has anything, we're going to end this, and I owe you one big time.
No, you ever get down this way, man, I'm going to take you out to dinner. So I got a big Omaha
I'll come
steak
back
with your
to
name
Omaha
on it.
anytime. That was an incredible city. I had a great time.
Yeah. All right. Well, I appreciate it, guys.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Take care.
Thank you very much.
Bye.